Well, again, it's a pleasure to be with you. I've been following this agenda and I've been following the FDL creation since the very first weeks or months. It's great to see how it is evolving and really getting involved in very important issues related to finance and development in the world. So let me bring you my perspectives from Brazil. I just would like, first of all, to bring back back to basics somehow to some of the concepts and that really brings us to the agenda of the MDBs and how they are relevant for development, but especially talking about green finance. It is interesting to see how green development finance has been evolving and getting momentum in the last couple of years, obviously due to the agenda related to climate change and how that was very important for the last COP. It is critical to get the means that really will take us to the goals and results that we need in terms of climate. But then mobilizing both private and public resources are very capital for development. And I just like to add here that having a perspective on green finance means not only having environmental issues into account, but also social issues, inequality issues that are really important and have been rising in the last couple of years due to the pandemic crisis and so on. So we need to deliver more. Green finance is essential, but we need not only to address the challenges, taking environmental issues apart from the social and issues that are very important for a country like Brazil. We've seen poverty come back to our country. We've seen inequality in a country that is quite unequal growing up. So we need to bring a green finance together with the challenge of social inequalities, and that's my first take here. We've seen also in the last couple of years the renewal of this development agenda, both in academia and in the government, and I have somehow one step in academia and another one in the government. I've seen that in Brazil. We know how markets are not always and quite frequently not delivering good solutions, especially for poor and developing countries. And in a time of radical uncertainty, as the one we're living right now, public finance, be through fiscal and national development banks, but also multilateral development banks, is critical to push development and growth. So, and obviously deal with the great challenges of finance. So how to get to this goal of mixing private and public finance and deliver on the green development imperatives of countries. The MDBs, they have been flexing their muscle somehow, and we can see that they're going green. At least that's what they say. Most of their strategy reports, 40 to 50% of the total volume of approvals for many of the key MDBs in the world should be linked to climate change or mitigation or adaptation, as they say. ESG is everywhere in the private sector, and we start to see all the discussions on greenwashing and things like that. But so what exactly do we mean when we're talking about the MDBs, especially here, when we say they're going green? And in my opinion, here we have something, a work to do, and the think tanks are very important in that sense. We need a common grammar, a common vocabulary in order to deal with that. And we need metrics to assess the green impact of the project. So in my opinion, what we have up to now is this clear need to push green finance. The banks are trying to move in their own way, but we do not really know exactly what each of the MDBs mean when they're talking about green finance. And the MDBs, they have been quite important in Brazil for some time now. We have seen a diversification of portfolio, both in sovereign and non-sovereign operations in the country. And there's this growing competition of MDBs in Brazil. AIIB is starting to their operations in Brazil. We have the NDB, the New Development Bank. We have the idea of a review of Fomplata and some other MDBs. So it is a relatively competitive market. What is something to have in mind, and I'll come to that in a moment. But I think, and just like to start before I show you some data, to stress this point that is pretty much on my own reflection, being an academic, but also with this foot in the policy world, the need of a national strategy to deal with the MDBs. In the case of Brazil, I do see that we need to somehow organize that competition, and that's critical to deliver on the green imperatives in the country. Just to bring you some data from the sovereign portfolio of the banks. I just took the 5 main banks in Brazil and the total amount of money that they are right now executing in projects in the country, more than $50 billion, and you can see the number of projects and the total amount there. Here we have, for a number of projects, the sectors where they are concentrated, and we see we have quite different sectors, but urban development and social development are critical in the number of projects that are being executed. So that's something I just like to stress right now, and we will see that also with the projects that are approved but not yet executed. There's a concentration of the MDBs agenda in Brazil on suburban and social issues that are, let's say, important for development. Obviously, we're dealing with important urban issues, but it should be better connected to the climate change mitigation and adaptation agenda somehow, and especially in agriculture. You'll see in a minute some data on agriculture, given the importance of land use for Brazilian carbon emissions, for example. We have here for the sectors, which of the 5 MDBs where they are, but the point here is just see how important urban development and social development are. It's more than half of the portfolio in volume of the MDBs that's being executed in Brazil right now. If we take all the projects that were approved but not yet executed, so this money that's about to come into the Brazilian economy from the 5 MDBs, we have more than $14 billion, large amount of money. But we see just a slightly different scenario here when it comes to the number of projects approved. Lots of credit that means MDBs financing subnationals or other banks in the country. But look how, again, urban and social development continue to be very important in the portfolio. And that's also the case when we go to the volume of the money that are bringing into the country. Again, I'll share with you my presentation. You can go into the details here later on. So my first point here, and just look at the amount. We have more than $5 billion in agriculture from IDB and the World Bank in the year to come. This is for credit. In fact, we have this small amount for agriculture. But my point about agriculture is that I see agriculture being very, very relevant for the climate agenda in Brazil. So we need to push a lot more investments in that sector together with energy. Just look how small the energy sector is being financed by MDBs, especially the New Development Bank that was created with this agenda of sustainable development and so on. But up to now has very just 3 projects being executed in Brazil, for example. So given this broad picture of what they're doing, what are the sectors that are relevant, we've seen first that we need to broaden the agenda and bring connections between the projects that are being financed by MDBs in Brazil and the green agenda in the country. So we need to move from the urban agenda that it continues to be critical, and it is also important to SDGs and so on, but we need to better allocate those resources in sectors that would deliver the most to the climate imperatives in the country. And more than that, we need to make the MDBs more and more connected to the needs of Brazil. And that's my first take here. And I'm getting to the end of the presentation with those 10 refreshed proposals to foster the role of MDBs in Brazil. Nothing new here, in fact, but really important to, in my take, to foster the role of the banks in Brazil in this green transition period. First is the need to take the client's perspective reality into account. In that case, we have some banks that really tends to bring in top-down perspective and want Brazil to implement the way they want a project, sometimes even not in accordance with the Brazilian law. So we need to take the points from the clients, in that case, the case Brazil, the Brazilian strategy on growth, on development into account in order to deliver more. So second, connecting to real social environmental assets. In the case of Brazil, the Amazon is a great asset. And some banks like the IDB are really moving forward with an agenda to finance development in the Amazon and so on. I'm sure in the next government we're going to have a renewal of that agenda, and hopefully we're going to see the MDBs connecting to the real assets of the country. In our case, delivering sustainable development in the Amazon region, for example, is very critical, not only for Brazil but for the world. Third, new waves of capital allocation and capital incrementation of the MDBs. We have the 10th round of capital increase at CAF, at the Latin American Development Bank. Right now, we have the idea of refinancing from Plata. The World Bank will come next year with a new wave of capital increase. So we need to, in that sense, the discussions in the G20 on capital adequacy framework and how to maybe reframe callable capital in the risk metrics of the MDBs is something interesting to take into account. And FDL has been delivering some ideas on that. Reimagining financial instruments, again, here with a clear connection with this G20 agenda, we need to reassess risk somehow, going to my fifth point. So we need to mobilize the private sector, but the idea of reassessing risk goes not only with this idea of getting the private sector in long-term projects and investments, but also in reimagining financial instruments in a way that we can really boost and leverage the multilateral development banks in order to deliver on green development. Flexibility would be my sixth. So flexibility to co-finance with transparency, with coordination, again, connecting with the national agenda and the national imperatives, assessing the impacts and managing the portfolio. Here is a clear connection with my point. What does it mean to go green? So we need to create metrics that really allow us to go beyond the good proposals and intentions of being green and frame it in a better way. Navigating the power structures of finance, we know the way geopolitical tensions are right now in the world, in how multilateral development banks somehow are connected to some power structures In the case of Brazil, being a member of the World Bank, being a member of the MDB, being a member of CAF, we have something to say when it comes to that. So CAF and Fomplata should be critical for Latin American region and for Brazilian agenda when it comes to regional integration. The World Bank has another structure of power and has another take from a Brazilian perspective. The NDB is the great global bank that we're part of, where we can really manage to push some agendas of interest when it comes to green development. So that's also something relevant. We cannot take power out of that. Power is in that. It is in the MDBs structure, governance, and how they function. Going beyond the usual goals and processes, so being proactive, that's something critical. And I've seen that, for example, some of the best banks that are really delivering in Brazil, I'm not gonna say the names, but they are proactive. They are the ones that go to the city when there is a catastrophe and talk to the mayor and try to deliver a credit line to deal with the problem. We do not need, in Brazil, we do not need the banks that will wait for somebody with a good suit to go to the bank with a great bankable project so that the bank will finance. We need banks that go for the problems, that really go and try to, together with the institutions and actors in Brazil, try to deliver new lines, new finance for the problems. And that's also the case for green finance in my point here. And also the last one, values, good governance, and impact. All those banks are connecting more and more to the SDG agenda. The idea of reviewing governance and making it more transparent and more connected to the green imperatives is very important. But more than that, we need that proactive and the assessment of the impacts when it comes to the MDBs. So assessing impact is essential, is crucial, but it is also crucial to have a network of banks that are really connected to the national development goals, to the national strategies, and really delivering closer to the actors that are relevant in the country. So those are my takes today. Thank you very much. It will be a pleasure to share with you some more ideas during the Q&A. Thank you.